Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for all of those who have joined us today. Inshallah, we intend to be getting started here very soon. I just want to allow folks that are still trickling in to join us so that we can have a good crowd, inshallah. There's a lot of people who have been asking for this, so inshallah, hopefully we can all benefit from this program. And Ramadan Mubarak to all of my fellow brothers and sisters who are here with us. I hope everyone's fasts are going well. And for those that have submitted questions already, we'll try and address those. Otherwise, if anyone does have some questions that you wish to ask, some of those I'm sure, inshallah, will be addressed as we progress throughout this webinar. But if you have anything pressing on in the back of your mind that you want to be able to have addressed, feel free to submit that through the Q&A box, and we will try as time permits to address those today. I know there'll be Maghrib coming up, and we don't want to keep people here waiting while it's iftar and salat. So yeah, without further ado, I will get started. I know we're waiting for Sheikh Aarij Anwar. He's one of our presenters. I imagine he's on his way here pretty soon, but I think it would be good to hopefully get started with introductions so that you all are aware about what we are going to be, inshallah, covering as well, and our speakers as well, so that you have a little bit of information about their backgrounds. My name is Aliredha Walji. I am the CEO of ShariaPortfolio. I will be, inshallah, just moderating the session for today. I'm sure you guys have seen me, heard me at prior sessions, so I will be, I will be just kind of low key for this event, and hopefully our scholars, respectable scholars that we have, can address your questions and cover the important information that you will need for tonight's session. So today we title our webinar, Savings, Investments, and Zakat. And this is our standard disclaimer that we put on all our webinars. You're welcome to check that out at your own leisure. Sheikh Umer Khan, who is here with us today, as you can see, he is our Sharia advisor at ShariaPortfolio. He graduated with the highest marks in his class in the formal Shahada Al-Alimiyya degree. And he also has been authorized by Darul Uloom. He completed a traditional Dars in Nizami Dawra of the 6 canonical books of Hadith. He completed his Ifta, which is the license to give Islamic legal verdicts. And that has been able to grant him the traditional title of Mufti. He has a master's in finance from UPenn and in Wharton, another master's in Islamic finance, and he holds several professional certifications and qualifications in Islamic finance. He teaches the Islamic sciences at seminaries such as Institute of Knowledge, Al-Salam Institute, among others. I'm sure you guys have seen him or heard about those organizations. He researches and writes fatwas for various institutions and serves as Sharia advisor to other companies as well. He is also a member of the Fiqh Council of North America. So he is one of our presenters, inshallah, tonight. We also have Sheikh Aarij Anwar, who is the chaplain at University of Western Ontario. He's an expert on issues of marriage, Muslim communities, community crisis, and so on and so forth. Imam Aarij Anwar was born in Karachi, grew up in the Toronto area. He serves as the Director of Religious Affairs at the London Mosque there. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Bachelor of Computer Science, Bachelor of Education, and Bachelor of Islamic Sciences and Fiqh and Usul al-Fiqh. Previously he founded Kutuf Academy for Arabic Studies. He's published curriculum for Islamic schools, and he has also been involved as the Zakat advisor for the National Zakat Foundation, as well as instructor for Al-Kawthar Institute. He lives in London, which is not UK, but London, Ontario. And he's happily married with his wife and four daughters. So inshallah, we are tremendously blessed to be able to have two scholars, to be able to present on this important topic. I'm going to speak less so that we allow them enough time to cover their material. I'll be sharing the screen, inshallah, Sheikh Aarij, and you can just guide me when to go ahead and click next so that we can keep moving along. And then, inshallah, any questions that come in, we'll try and address at the end. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Sheikh Aarij, you're all the next speaker here.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa wala amma ba'd. It's a great honor, as always, to be here with you all. Alhamdulillah, a great honor to be here with our dear guest, Sheikh Umer, as well. Alhamdulillah, it's the first time being together in a webinar. I hope to be with you in person sometime as well. It's always great to talk about zakat. Zakat is a pillar of our deen, of course, and usually the Muslims give their zakat in Ramadan. So it's a beautiful reminder for us to renew our intentions, to make sure that when we do this act of worship, we do it with intentionality and understanding, and that not only brings about this contentment when we perform the act of zakat by giving it, but inshallah also will increase our barakah bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. I'll start with the story of the wealthy Sahabi. I've shared this a few times before, but I think it's a good reminder for us all because it gives us a perspective on how we as Muslims view the relationship of what's called zuhud, being detached from the world and acquiring worldly possessions like wealth. How do we view that relationship? It's best illustrated by the examples of the Sahaba, particularly the Sahabi in question here, Az-Zubair ibn al-Awwam radiallahu anhu. Az-Zubair ibn al-Awwam, if you don't know who he was one of the top 10 Sahaba, what's called in Arabic al-Ashara al-Mubashirina bil-Jannah, the top 10 who were given the glad tidings that they will be going to paradise by name while they were still alive. That is the most elite level of companions. And he was one of those 10. He was also a cousin of the Prophet ﷺ and was the brother-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ as well. He was married to Asma bint Abi Bakr, Asma the daughter of Abu Bakr. He was Abu Bakr's son-in-law. And of course, our mother Aisha was married to the Prophet ﷺ, so they were brother-in-laws in that relationship as well. The point being, he's a very close Sahabi, one of the earliest ones to accept Islam, the elite of the Sahaba, creme de la creme, if you want to call it. And, all the virtues that you can think of, Az-Zubair had it, radiallahu anhu. He was also extremely wealthy. He was extremely wealthy. Imam al-Dhahabi, rahimahullah, narrates that this is Imam al-Dhahabi is a historian. He is the one who compiled the stories, the biographies in an encyclopedia called Siyar A'lam al-Nubala. And in that book, he mentions وقال ابن عيينة عن هشام عن أبيه اقتسم مال الزبير على 40 ألف. He said that the inheritance of Az-Zubair ibn al-Awwam was distributed, meaning it was distributed to his inheritors, and it is 40 million. He didn't qualify 40 million what? In another narration, it's 50 million. He didn't qualify it. He just said it's 40 million. And if you were to assume this is dirham, then that is and that's the floor, right? You take it as a silver coins, and that's like the cheaper of the two commodities here. That will come out to something like 59 million to 74 million when he passed away, radiallahu anhu. And if you were to take it as dinar or a mixture of dirham and dinar and other items that are of value, then it goes up even further. The point being, Az-Zubair ibn Awam was the most elite category of Sahaba, someone who completely is connected to Allah and His Messenger. His place in Jannah is booked, yet you look at his material gains and his wealth, he was also very wealthy. What that tells us, next slide please, Aliredha, is that as Muslims, we are taught to remember that our eternal home is Jannah. That is the thing that we're working for, of course. But in this world, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا, as we live in this life, we don't forget our share in this life. And as Zubair's story and his life really teaches us that lesson very beautifully. He was the one who had the best of this life and the best of the next life. And we pray that we are blessed in that same way, inshallah ta'ala.
I think we might have a little bit of technical difficulty there. Sheikh Aarij, I think you went out for about 10 seconds or so.
Oh, did I? Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
No worries.
You know what happened is, let me actually do something. Just give me a second here, please. I'll tell you what happened. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Yes, I think you can hear me now. Yes?
Yes, now you're back.
We actually had a storm in our area, believe it or not. And I think that's been causing internet disruptions for a while. So I have switched to my mobile data, and it's a lot more reliable in these stormy times. I know, Brother, you're you're in Florida, and Sheikh Umar, you're, I think, in California, so you guys don't know what snowstorms are. The investing discouraged? As I was alluding to before I got cut off, this is something actually our deen teaches us to be responsible, fiscally responsible. And the example here is from a hadith from At-Tirmidhi. أَلَا مَنْ وَلِيَ يَتِيمًا لَهُ مَالٌ فَلْيَتَّجِرْ فِيهِ وَلَا يَتْرُكْهُ حَتَّى تَأْكُلَهُ الصَّدَقَةِ. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the legal guardian of an orphan should invest the orphan's inheritance, lest it's consumed by zakat payments. What he is alluding to is the yatim, the orphan, is a child who has inherited wealth. His father has passed away, for example, or her father has passed away. And that wealth is not given to the child immediately. It is held in trust for that child by a guardian, a legal guardian, and that's called a wali. If the wali is irresponsible and lets the money sit, each year 2.5% of it is taken away from zakat. So if that money is sitting for 10 years, a quarter of it is lost before the child is given their inheritance, and that is irresponsible. That is the wali not living up to the responsibility that was entrusted to them. So what they should do is فَلْيَتَّجِرْ فِيهِ, from the word tijara, to trade. فَلْيَتَّجِرْ فِيهِ, the wali should trade with it, meaning invest it, so that it grows to the point that it doesn't get consumed by the zakat that is taken year after year. From this hadith, there are many different rulings that are branched off of this hadith, but the immediate benefit that we can take from this is the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is teaching us that this is an encouraged practice. This is not something that's looked down upon. And in fact, in circumstances like in this one, it is very much so required to make sure that the responsibility that is there for this particular orphan child is fulfilled. Next slide, please. What is zakat? Now we've spoken about a little bit about wealth and a little bit about investment. Now let's talk about the meat and potatoes of our presentation. Not to make you want your iftar sooner, but the crux of our discussion is as zakat. What is the definition of zakat? We'll start with that. It is the obligatory charity that is the right of the poor, needy recipients. This is important. It is an obligation. This is different than sadaqah. Sadaqah is a optional thing. Okay, it is the right of the poor, needy recipients. As Muslims, this is a beautiful way that we look at our charity and our zakat specifically. We consider our zakat haqqun, right? This is a right, right? Haqqun wajib fi malin khas, like they say in the books of fiqh. We consider this to be the right of the poor. It's not that this is my money, so I'm giving it to you as a favor. To the contrary, we see that once zakat is due, this is now the right of the poor. We are now keeping it, and we must quickly disperse it and give it to them. It is due only upon specific types of wealth which have been retained for 1 lunar year. This is also critical. It is not, zakat is not applied for everything, not every asset, not everything valuable you pay zakat on. It is restrictive to a limited number of categories. And the other thing also is that it is something that has been kept for a year. So it is on savings. Zakat is paid on something you've saved. It is not something that you pay on income. It is not income tax. It is due only upon the well-to-do. How do we define the well-to-do? That is the concept of an-nisab. The nisab is the threshold. Next slide. Oh, thank you. It's the threshold that must be met for a person to pay their zakat. If a person's wealth, their total wealth, the total assets that they have dipped below the nisab value, then they pay zakat that year. They're not liable to pay zakat. If they have remained above the nisab, then that is the year that they pay zakat. So that's how we define well-to-do, and that is the definition of a zakat. Zakatable wealth, excuse me, zakatable wealth, the general rule is that zakat is due if one is above the nisab value for 1 complete Islamic year. Important note, it is the Hijri calendar, the lunar year that we go by, not the Gregorian calendar. As you may know, it is shorter than the Gregorian calendar, so we'll keep moving throughout the year. Of course, zakatable wealth here is also free from haram income. Zakat is not due upon earnings that are haram. This doesn't mean that you say, you know what, I'll just earn haram so I don't have to pay zakat, right? That is not the point. We don't condone this behavior. What we're trying to get at is haram wealth is impermissible for a believer to possess and use in the first place. So in Allah, as the Prophet said, in Allah, tayyibun la yaqbalu illa tayyiban. Allah is pure and He only accepts that which is pure. So what we're trying to get at here with this is you completely remove in the best possible, most smoothest way haram income sources from your wealth. But if you do have haram income sources, then that wealth is disposed of. It is not considered to be an asset that you pay zakat on. Next slide, please. Is this slide number 12? Sorry, brother, I don't see this numbers. I think I'll continue until
yeah, we'll take on. Finish this, and then after that, inshallah.
Great. Sorry, perfect. So I was gonna actually ask the folks, can they chat with us, brother Ali?
Yeah. Feel free to use the chat according to the question on this slide. Hopefully, you can
Great.
respond.
Brother Ali, stop going through the slides just yet. Hold on.
Okay.
Can the folks type something? The people who are attending, if you can type something, please, that would be fantastic. In the chat, not the QA. I think they're typing in the QA, which is great, but in the chat itself. Because I was gonna ask them, I was gonna prompt them and ask them, is zakat due on the following asset? I think they're trying to say that they probably can't type, huh, brother Aliredha? You have to.
Salahuddin, you can enable the chat. I think
they should be able to type to the hosts and panelists. I think that's an option.
Oh, can they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems like everyone thinks chat is disabled. Okay.
Yeah, there's chat is disabled. Just type it in the question.
We're getting confirmation. Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, so
at least we know they're listening in.
That is great, alhamdulillah. Is Brother Salahuddin with us?
Yes, Salahuddin, if you can enable that, that would be great.
Because I think the slide, without the engagement, the slide is kind of like a useless slide.
Yeah, he's on mute. I don't know if he's still here, but
oh, maybe he stepped away for a minute. Okay, what we'll do is I guess we'll come back
as time permits. Maybe we come back to this slide.
Yeah, if we're able to, maybe I'll just do I'll pretend to be the audience here as well. So the slide here is we're asking, is zakat due on the following asset? Okay, so here is a asset. This is cash, right? The answer unanimously here is yes, you pay zakat on cash. The next item is Gold bullion, right? This is gold that a person has purchased and they have stored and they bought this for investment purposes. They're now wearing this, unless someone is really crazy, they're wearing around a bullion around their neck and walking around. But generally, people don't do that. It's bought for investment purposes. And that is also, zakat is due on that as well. Okay, great. Next on the item was, on the slide was, excuse me, the next item, if you click, a house. The house that you live in, do you pay zakat on that? And generally the people would answer, no, you do not pay zakat on that. And that is the correct answer. Your residence, you don't pay zakat on it, even if it's extremely valuable. Next item, a car. The car that you drive, you don't pay zakat on. Again, we're assuming a person's personal belongings. So they don't pay zakat on that either. Here is an example that is, I would explain. And the explanation here is this is the oven of a bakery. Yes. So assume that you own a bakery here, and we're going to use the bakery analogy just to highlight the point. You own a bakery, and the money. So the oven of this bakery, you owe zakat on the value of the oven of the bakery. The answer would be no. You don't owe zakat on that. That is what we call a fixed asset. Okay, similar to like the lighting, similar to the flooring, etc. But the next item, please, brother Aliredha, is the bread or the pizza or the flour and the ingredients that are used to make your products, the baked goods. Would you pay zakat on that? The answer for that would be yes. Again, assuming that this is something you've stored, has been with you for a year, and the profits from it have been with you. The idea of this example was you don't pay zakat on the fixed items in the bakery like the oven, but you would pay it on the products and the ingredients of the products that you have to make that money and to make those profits. That is what the zakat will be due on. It's called urudut tijara in Arabic, the commodities that you sell to make money. Next slide, please. As you mentioned before, zakat is a restrictive list, right? It is only paid on these 4 categories of wealth. Number 1 is cattle/livestock, and that depends on the animal type. For example, if you have camels, it has a different nisab, and if you have cows or sheep, that has a different nisab. I don't think you have that in the audience. If you do, mashallah, you can always message us afterwards. Crop yield, a farmer, like the Quran says, وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ. When a crop has been harvested, zakat is due on it at that time. 5% if the crops were irrigated artificially, 10% if they were irrigated naturally, right? And this is fair. If you think about this, a person who's doing nothing, their crops are just growing, they pay a bit more zakat. The one who's investing and spending money to grow their crops, they pay less. Again, I don't think that applies to us either. Now, the thing that does apply to us is cash, gold, and silver. That is 2.5%. That is the amount في كل 40 dirham, right? For every 40, you pay 1 over 40 is 2.5%. Okay. And the business commodities, urud al-tijara, this is products sold to make money, right? This is the bread, the pizza, the ingredients that go into making the bread and the pizza. That is what you pay zakat on. And we break it down by current assets and fixed assets. Current assets, also known as short-term assets, are considered liquid and they're subject to zakat, the full 2.5%. And the fixed assets like the oven is considered illiquid and thus is exempt from zakat. Next slide, please. And from that example, the bakery example is that you would not pay zakat on the equipment of the store. That's considered to be a fixed asset, whereas you would pay zakat on the profits from the bakery, the bread, whatever else that's sold. So this is the basics of zakat, definition, what it's to be paid on, and when it comes to business assets, a particular differentiator there, inshallah. With that, I will turn it over to our dear Sheikh, Sheikh Umer.
Thank you so much, Sheikh Aarij. I will, inshallah, continue. Just for the rest of those who are here, Sheikh Aarij will attempt to answer some of the questions. I've seen some of those already addressed, so thank you for those who have been sending them in. We'll have about 40 minutes or so. So Just keep that in mind, because I do not want to be the one to keep you from your salat or pray, masjid driving or whatever that you want to prepare for. So we'll try and move along with the rest of the material here. So without further ado, Sheikh Umer, you can take it from here.
Okay. Sheikh Aarij, I think this was actually your slide. Do you want to take it?
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize that, Sheikh. Sorry. Would you like me to continue on that? Or?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. I don't know. I think I have the wrong numbers on the thing. So I think I stop here, and then the next one, who pays zakat, is yours, right?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Zakat is not paid on. I think this makes sense because I talked about what it is paid on, then also should talk about what it's not paid on. So a loan's payable, right? The idea behind a loan is that it is money that is someone else's money, and you have it in your possession for a temporary time, and then you have to return it back. So the person who has borrowed the money doesn't pay zakat on this. Now, we don't, we have people who have long-term loans, mortgages, different types of loan agreements that they have. It would be completely uncalled for them to say, oh, I have a large long-term loan, so I will not pay zakat on anything. To solve this problem, the idea we kind of map that long-term loan to a yearly short-term loan. The way that works is you would take the long-term loans principal payments. Again, we don't condone interest-bearing loans. Just for the sake of conveying the point here, the principal of that long-term loan payment multiplied by 12, that amount is what we would consider to be a current year's worth of loan, and that is a person, if they choose to not pay zakat on that amount, that is fair. But the whole long-term loan that a person has, they do not exclude that. That would be that would not be appropriate. Residential or investment property, what's called aqar in Arabic, property, zakat on its value is not paid. Residential, of course, that's your house, your home, you don't pay zakat on it. Investment property, even on the value, you don't pay zakat. From the profits of that, you can, if those profits are kept and saved for a year, then of course zakat is paid on those profits, like any other profit you make from any other business. Inaccessible wealth, one of the important requirements for zakat is it is tamamul milk. You have full access and full control of that wealth. If you don't have access to it, you don't pay zakat on it. An example of that is pensions or locked-in retirement accounts. And of course, the last item here is precious metals. Other than gold and silver, there's no zakat on it. Stones that are precious, valuable as they might be, there's no zakat on it, as long as, of course, it's a personal item the person is using, and cars, etc. Things of value, zakat is not applied to them. It's only applied to those specific restricted categories, inshallah. With that, I'll turn it over to our Sheikh Anwar.
We can go to the next. Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Okay, so maybe this should have been towards the beginning of the presentation. We're talking about who pays zakat, right? So we talk about what is zakat and who pays zakat. So obviously there are certain conditions. And I'm assuming most of you on this webinar are here because you're Muslim, and you know as a Muslim you have to pay zakat. There were some questions about, even in the Q&A that were coming up, about is there zakat due on children? And actually there's a difference of opinion on that, is do children pay zakat or not? So according to the Hanafi madhab, excuse me, according to the Hanafi madhab, zakat becomes due at the same time that all other acts of worship become due. So as you reach puberty, you have to start praying your 5 prayers. You have to start complying with all the other requirements of Islamic law. That is when zakat starts becoming due upon you. However, the other 3 madhabs, the Shafi'is, Malikis, Hanbalis, feel that actually zakat is due prior to you reaching puberty, and the zakat is due on the wealth. So even if you're a baby, even if you're 3 years old, 2 years old, the guardian who's taking care of the child has to make sure they're taking care of the zakat. So if you follow a particular madhab, you can follow that madhab, or if you want to be safe, it's best just to pay on behalf of the child anyway. The guardian can go ahead and pay on behalf of the child. And Sheikh Aarij quoted a hadith at the beginning. If you remember, he talked about فَلْيَتَّجِرْ فِيهِ, which is listed in Tirmidhi either as a hadith that is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, or potentially was a saying of Umar radiallahu anh. There's some debate about who actually said it, if it was the Prophet sallallahu or Umar radiallahu anh. Anyways, it's taken to be something that's authentic, that comes from our religion. And it talks about what? It talks about the guardian paying zakat on behalf of a child, right? So that gives some strength to this argument of maybe zakat is due on all children as well. And so that's just the safer thing to do. Okay, I don't think we have to worry about people who are slaves, not slaves, etc., things like that. Let's talk about when is zakat due? What is the minimum amount of wealth that you have? So Islam is not trying to be difficult on you. The Sharia is supposed to be easy. Only if you have a minimum amount of wealth, you have a certain amount of savings that you have, does the zakat become due. So if you're a poor person, then you don't have to pay zakat. And how do we know that amount? Well, there's two standards. It's either 87.48 grams of gold or 612 grams of silver. Well, most of us don't think in dirham and dinar in grams of gold and silver. So let's translate that for you. Gold of 87 grams is nowadays about, I think, 5,400 US dollars, something like that. And the silver is, I think, like $560. So why do we have these two different amounts? Well, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, these weren't two different amounts. These were actually equivalent amounts. What happened over time was that the price of gold and silver diverged. And so now we have these two different amounts. So what do we take? Do we take the gold standard or the silver standard? And there's, a lot of scholarly discussion about which one's better. Personally, I like what Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi said about this, is we should go with without getting into the details, we should go with the gold standard. So zakat is less burdensome upon people at this point in time. So if you have something like $5,400, then zakat becomes due on you. And as Sheikh Aarij explained, you have to have that wealth for a period of a year, and that is a full lunar year. So that's 354 days. So we're not going to pay zakat on January 2nd and then come next year pay zakat on January 2nd again. If we're paying on January 2nd, next year we might have to pay December 22nd, 23rd, something like that, because the lunar calendar is only 354 days, not 364, 365 days, 366 days, right? Okay, so next slide, please. So these charts kind of show what happens. There were a lot of questions about this in the Q&A, is what if I have wealth that started at one place and it ended up in another place? Because most of us don't have just one account where the bank balance stays steady the whole time. So some of these are a little bit easier than others. And usually, I like Sheikh Aarij, I like to have the Q&A so I can ask you, what do you think? But I'll just have to tell you the way that it works. So let's say this first chart over here, the top left chart is showing your wealth. And this orange line, the dashed line that you see, is the nisab value. So that's the $5,400 in the gold nisab that we're using. And the blue shows the wealth that you have. And let's say your zakah happens to align, because many people have it this way, it happens to align with Ramadan 1. Okay, so this slide's actually a year old, so it's showing like 2 years ago and 1 year ago. Let's ignore that. Let's assume that Ramadan 1 happened at the beginning here, and then Ramadan 1 happens a year later, or a lunar year later, right? And you had wealth that was below the orange line, it's below the nisab, and you ended the balance that is below the nisab. And I'll ask and I'll say, hey, do you think this person has to pay zakat? You have wealth that's below the nisab at the beginning, wealth that's below the nisab at the end, and people usually get this one right and say, nope, no zakat is due. Jazakallah khair for giving us an easy question. Okay, so the next one is, let's look at this one. The top right, okay? In the top right one, what you have is at the beginning of the year, you are below the nisab, but at the end of the year, you ended up above the nisab. And this is how we want to see our wealth grow, inshallah, right? We want to start and keep continuing to grow our investments over time. So this is something that we want to see as a part of our wealth. And so in this particular case, if you look, that an entire lunar year has passed, but an entire lunar year has not passed since you reached the nisab. Therefore, again, zakat is not due, but next year, once another year has passed, then zakat will become due upon you. Okay, so again, it's inshallah an easy one to look at. Now let's look at the bottom left. In the bottom left, you reached nisab in Ramadan 1, okay? And then you have continued to stay above the nisab on Ramadan 1 a year later. Okay, so you started above the nisab, it always stayed above the nisab, and you ended above the nisab. So again, this should be very clear. You had the nisab, you reached that value, you maintained it for a full year, and at the end, you still had a value above the nisab. So you're going to end up paying zakat. Okay, now the fourth one is the bottom right. And this one tricks people up a little bit. Because what happens is you started in this starts off a little bit. Let's assume it starts above the nisab in Ramadan 1 on the left side. Okay. And then at some point it goes down and it hits all the way down to 0. So you have no money left. And then you come back up and now you're at nisab again. So let me explain that again. You started above the nisab and you ended above the nisab. The whole year went by, but somewhere in the middle, you hit down and hit 0. You had no money left. So do you have to pay zakat? Do you just look at the beginning and the ending balance, or do you look at the fact that you hit 0 at some point in time? And the scholars actually have consensus on this one, that if it hits 0, you will not be paying zakat. You have to wait till that, now the second time that you hit the nisab, you got above the value, you wait 1 year and then you pay zakat. Now, there's another version of this graph that wasn't included in the slides, but that version is, what if you didn't hit all the way down to 0? So what if you start above nisab, you end below above nisab, but somewhere in the middle, the value went below the nisab, but it didn't hit all the way to 0. And there is a difference of opinion amongst the scholars on that one. The Hanafis argue that you still have to pay the zakat, and the non-Hanafis argue that you do not have to pay the zakat. So there's a difference of opinion, and I would say be safe about this. If you have value that's equal to nisab, you've had value equal to nisab a year before, the safer thing to do is just pay the zakat. But just so you know, so that you're not looking at others who might not be paying zakat, like how come that person's not paying zakat? Know that there is a difference of opinion on this issue. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so how do you calculate the zakat? Number one, you add up all of your total assets. And Sheikh Aarij talked about this, right? You add up your cash, your cryptocurrencies, you look at all your bank accounts, all the gold and the silver that you have, all the stocks that you have. You take any real estate that you've purchased for gains, that you're intending to buy this real estate to sell it to get some capital gains, any business assets that you have that are current assets, that are not fixed assets, right? You add up, and as a business, you also have to include your inventory. So you have work in progress inventory, you have raw materials, finished goods, all of that. You add all of those assets up, and you talked about what you don't add up. You don't add up your car, your personal house, your clothes, things like that. But you add up all the other assets. You subtract the things. Actually, the way you can start is just say, add up everything. I have everything. This is my total net worth. That's one way to start. If you have a net worth calculator somewhere, you're using Mint or some other tool where you have all of your net worth, you can do that. And you subtract the things that are for personal use. So you subtract out your clothes, you subtract out your cars, anything that you have that you're using on a personal use basis. And you also subtract out those things that are used to produce something, right? We use the example of the pizza oven. So an equivalent, because I saw a lot of questions about this in the Q&A as well, is something like a pizza oven is also a rental property, because you buy this house and then you're using it to give out on rent, and you're getting this rental income for it, okay? So the price of the house is not zakatable, but the rental income that you're getting gets added into your money, and that becomes zakatable. So, and then you also subtract out deductions, and we talked about, Sheikh Aarij talked about this, is you will subtract out the liabilities that are becoming due. So if you have rent that is due, and again, there's some difference. Some people say you can subtract 1 month's worth of liabilities. Some people say you could do 1 year, and there's some difference on that. But basically, you're saying a rent bill that is coming due in a month, a utility bill that's coming due, or a year, whatever opinion you follow. It's a credit card bill that's become due. It's taxes that have become due. It's student loans that have become due. It's a mortgage payment that's become due, but only the part that's becoming due, not the 30-year mortgage payment, but the 1 month or the 1 year, whichever opinion you follow, okay? And then basically, this is, someone asked this question on the Q&A as well, is how do I calculate my net worth against the nisab? This is what you add up, and you check to see if it meets the nisab, because this is your net worth. And if it meets the nisab, then you pay zakat. If it doesn't meet the nisab, then you don't have to pay zakat. And if you are paying zakat, then you take the whole thing and you multiply it by 2.5%. Again, we're making this simple. We're not talking about if you have a mine with metals, or if you have a farm, or certain types of agricultural crops and things like that. We're excluding that right now. We're just talking about things like your cash or bank accounts and assets that are easy to calculate zakat on. Okay, let's continue to the next slide. Okay, so who do you pay zakat to? And we have the very famous verse of the recipients of zakah in the Quran, where Allah says, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَالْغَارِمِينَ وَفِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. And so Allah defined the 8 different categories of people that you could pay zakat to. One of the key differentiators between zakah and regular charity, sadaqah, is that zakah can only be given to those who are eligible for it. Whereas charity, you can give, like voluntary charity, you can give to anyone that you like, right? And so the key focuses here really should be on the first 2 categories, which is lil fuqara, the people who are in the poor, and then the masakin, which is the needy. Actually, let's go to the next slide because I think it talks about this in more detail. Yeah, so the poor. So what's the difference between the poor and the needy? That's a question that comes up, right? And different scholars have defined it in different ways. So I'll give you an example. Like when it comes to the fuqara, Imam Malik, Ibn Abbas, and Imam al-Zuhri, they said it's someone who is in need who does not ask. Imam al-Shafi'i says the one who has nothing. Imam Abu Hanifa said the one who is in need and who does ask, right? So who is the miskin? Imam Malik said it's the one who is in need and asks. And it's different than the other opinion that we just saw. Imam Shafi says it's someone who has some possessions, but he's still in need. Imam Abu Hanifa says it's someone who is in need who does not ask. So it doesn't really matter. What we're talking about is the people who are clearly poor, who don't have, these are the people who do not have an Islam. Okay, these are the people who do not have enough money saved up, and they are considered poor according to Islamic standards. Now, zakah can also be given to those who are employed by the state, by the Khilafah, who are collecting and distributing zakah. The question becomes, well, does that mean I can give zakah to an organization that is collecting money for me? And generally, the scholars would say no, because that organization is not sponsored by the state. And so it's acting as an agent on behalf of the zakah giver, whereas the state was acting as an agent on behalf of the zakat recipient. Then there's also other categories like people who are softening the hearts towards Islam, slaves, which we don't have to deal with much anymore, people with some wealth, but they have too much debt. So what if someone has a crazy student loan on them? They're stuck in a situation where they just have too much debt, and it seems like it's going to take them years and years and years to pay it off. What if they somehow racked up a massive credit card bill? They're stuck in these situations. We can also give to these people. So they don't just have to be really poor and not have any money. They may have some money, maybe they have a car, they have a house, they have all of these things, but they just have so much debt, and we want to take care of these people as well. And these are sort of the main categories I think are the ones that I wanted to cover is number 1, number 2, and number 6. Let's keep going. Okay, and depending on the madhab that you follow and the scholar that you follow, everyone will either say it's mandatory or they will say it's highly encouraged that you're giving your zakat to family. Now, a husband can't give his zakat to his wife because he's supposed to take care of his wife. He can't give zakat to his children because he's supposed to take care of his children. But he can give zakat to a cousin or an uncle or a second cousin. Your neighbor who's next to you is more deserving of zakat than someone who lives a few miles away. So the people who we should give priority to are the people who are close to us, either with family relations, or they're close to us because they're our friends, or they're close to us because they're our neighbors, or they're part of our community, they're part of our city, they're part of our state, they're part of our nation. So if Americans are not going to give zakat to Americans, guess what? No one from Palestine is going to get zakat to America. But if Americans prioritize America, there are other people in the world who are also sending money into Palestine. So I'm not saying don't give zakat to Palestine. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is prioritize your family, prioritize your area, and don't worry about the fact that $100 in America only goes this far, but $100 in Syria will go that far. Somebody needs to take care of America, and that's going to be Americans. So give your zakat locally before you start going to other causes. Let's keep going to the next one. There's a number of Q&A that comes up related to miscellaneous issues. Aliredha, do you feel like we should cover this, or maybe just go into the Q&A?
Yeah, I think because the Q&A and also the examples we've set might address the type of questions that are coming in. And right off the bat, if you can try and address the question of which started from earlier, what is the inaccessible wealth? Can we define that? Is it 401k? Is it IRA? And do we pay it on that? Because I've seen a few questions around that. And then there's also a question on property. There's a question on land. So since it's still connected to some of the other stuff that answered, or addressed, maybe you can address some of those, and then I'll put the next 2 slides, which are examples that I have encountered with clients and just hopefully will resonate with most of you who are here as well.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think we can skip this slide because this slide really generally addresses the Q&A that comes up from people. So let's just take the actual Q&A. So I think this is probably the most popular question that comes up is what is inaccessible wealth? So let's start with like sort of the non-controversial side, which is when it comes to retirement income. Let's say you earn a pension. Okay, those pension plans are generally you're contributing out of a paycheck on a regular basis for many years. And then when you retire, you get a monthly amount, right? There's no you don't really have a fixed amount that's yours, that's in an account, anything like that. So pensions are generally considered something that you've contributed to that's inaccessible that you do not have to pay for. The biggest question that everyone has is about 401k and IRA. Okay, so let me start by saying that the 95% opinion, okay, the 95% opinion, there's 2 major fiqh organizations in the United States. And generally, when it comes to these issues, you want to go to the country, you want to get the fatwa from the country in which you have these questions. So people from Canada should answer questions about RRSPs, right? People from the US should answer questions about 401k. People from the UK should answer questions about there. So we have 2 major fiqh councils that exist in North America. And particularly in the United States. One is the Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America, AMJA, and the other one is the Fiqh Council of North America, which is FCNA. So these are the 2 primary organizations that give fatwas. Now, the FCNA has not given an official ruling on zakat on 401k. It's something we're working on. I'm actually part of the Fiqh Council of North America. It's something we're working on. And inshallah, I hope in the next few months, we'll issue a ruling on this. AMJA does have a ruling, and AMJA's ruling is zakat is absolutely due on 401k and IRAs. And by the way, this is also I would say at least 95% scholarly opinion, is 401ks and IRAs are considered accessible wealth. Why? Why are they considered accessible wealth? Because people ask the question, if I pull money out of a 401k, don't I have to pay a penalty? So the reason they're considered accessible wealth is, number one, let's just kind of go through the basics. When you are putting money into a 401k, you voluntarily put money into this account that's under your name. Then you get to choose how you want to invest it, what investments you want to put that money into, and that money continues to grow on an annual basis. And let's say you have $100 in there, and you're seeing 5% in profits. It becomes $105. Then it becomes more than $110. Every year it continues to grow, and at the end of it, you pull it out. But you're choosing what to do with the money. Now the question becomes, but if I pull it out right now, I have to pay a penalty. So generally what the scholars have allowed is if you were to pull it out right now, you would have to pay a penalty. That's a 10% tax penalty. So what you could do is take your 401k or IRA balance, subtract 10% from the balance, and pay zakah on what remains. Like you're not, because the interesting thing is when you ask people, okay, yes, you have to pay penalty, but is anyone planning to pull money out of the 401k? And 100% of the people I've ever asked say, no, I'm going to keep it in there for 30 years until I retire. So the intention is actually to keep the money in there. In fact, you can also pull money out of your 401k if you like for a variety of different reasons without paying any penalty. I'm sure most of you know this, or if not, you can look it up. If you have medical bills that are becoming due, if you're a first-time home buyer, you have emergency expenses, there's many reasons why you can actually pull money out of your 401k with no penalty at all. And you can also take a loan against your 401k and you end up paying interest to yourself. I know that sounds really strange, but you pull money out of your account and you put money back in there and you pay some interest to yourself, and it becomes part of your money. So there's no penalty when you take a loan out. So there's many reasons, even for tuition, et cetera, there's many reasons you actually fully control the money in your 401k. So the majority opinion of the scholars is that 401k and IRA, you do have to pay zakah on. There is more of a minority opinion that exists that you do not have to pay on 401k and IRA. And the idea being is the concept that's used is you must have 100% control of the wealth in the account. And if you do not have 100%, like you're not 100% free, then you do not have to pay zakah. Okay. Okay. So let's go through the examples and we'll come back to the questions. So based on what I just shared, If you have 500,000 in the 401k, that account would be zakatable. You have 100,000 in the IRA, that would be zakatable. You have 100,000 in a joint account. So now the question becomes, how do you deal with a joint account, right? You have a husband and a wife, and they have a joint account. Well, Islamically speaking, to be very, very specific about it, the wife has to pay zakat on her wealth, and the husband has to pay zakat on his wealth. Okay, each person is due to pay zakat. Like, you don't pray on behalf of someone else, right? You don't fast on behalf of someone else. You can't just say, oh, my husband has to pay all of the zakat, or my wife has to pay all of the zakat. Now, if a husband chooses to pay on behalf of the wife, that's between them. They can work that out. But technically speaking, the amount that's the wife's, she has to pay on that, and the amount that's on the due on the husband, he has to pay on that. So let's say the wife has 20,000 of that money, the husband has 80,000. Then the wife would pay on the 20,000, the husband would pay on the 80,000. Okay, so the joint account, you just divide up based on whose wealth you really believe it is. You have to work through this stuff for, inheritance purposes, all these other purposes anyway. So you kind of know who owns how much money in that joint account. And if you really don't have this figured out, you can say it's 50-50. We just treat our money as 50-50. And that's how we do the zakat. UTMA, similarly, you add that in. So far we have, let's say, 500,000 plus 100,000 plus, let's say it's 80,000 of one person's wealth plus 50,000 plus savings accounts. So you add the 100,000 in, and you have the employee stock option plan. And so you add that in as well, the 300,000. Let's briefly talk about how zakat works on the stock options and ESPP and things like that. For anything that has vested in your stock account that is now in your ownership, you have to pay zakat on it. An actual stock, you have to pay zakat on. If it has not vested because it's not your wealth yet, you will not pay. That will be sort of like inaccessible wealth, right? You don't have access to that. And so you don't have to pay zakat on something that has not vested. And that applies to any type of account, anything that hasn't vested. Even if it's a 401k, you can have an unvested amount in there, no zakat due on that. You have an ESPP, it's not vested, no zakat due. You have an option grant, no zakat due on that. Also, stock options, it tends to be that if it's employee stock options, you don't pay zakat on the option, you pay zakat on actual stocks. You don't have to do a Black-Scholes calculation or something like that to figure out the value of the option grant. Okay, so then you have a $250,000 mortgage. Now that $250,000 mortgage, let's say, is due over 10 years. And so what you do is you say, okay, like Sheikh Aarij says, maybe you look at 1 year or 1 month, something like that. And you say, 50,000 is, or like, let's say 10,000 is due over the next month or the next year. I'm going to subtract that from all of this total that I've come up with. And I also have 50,000 in student loans, but only 5,000 of that is due this year. So I'm going to subtract another 5,000 for the student loan. So you take the 10,000 of the mortgage, the 5,000 of the student loans, and you subtract those from the total. And whatever that comes out to be, you pay on 2.5% of that.
Thank you, Sheikh Aarij. Now, with the employee stock option, that applies to even people who might be retired, where they're getting a certain amount from, let's say, an annuity plan, or it's only the portion that they have access to, that they're getting at that particular time. That's their income, right? So even though the lump sum amount might be a larger value, if they're only receiving a small amount, because I've had a question come up with that, then they're only going to pay on whatever they're getting for that year, and that's what's zakat, correct?
Yeah. So one of the first questions I love to ask people as soon as we talk about the 2.5% is, I say, someone makes $100,000 in a year. How much zakat is due on them? And there's always someone who quickly raises their hand and says $2,500, right? And then I remind them and I say, zakat is not due on your income. Zakat is not due on your salary. If you have an annuity agreement with your employer where they pay you $10,000 a year, zakat is not due on the $10,000. As soon as you get the $10,000, it's still not due. There's no zakat due on it. What happens is that zakat, that amount of money, that income that you received, it's income, right? You add that to your bank account, and then when your 254 days have passed and you look at the balance, that's when zakat becomes due on it. So you receive a paycheck, you receive a gift, you receive income, you receive any type of annuity, you receive part of your pension. There's no zakat due at the time that you receive it. You add it to your bank balance, you wait till your zakat is due next time, and then you pay zakat on that. The employee stock plan, generally, what we're talking about with the ESOPs and ESPPs, generally, is that you get a grant upfront of some sort of stock, and then it vests over a certain time period. And as that vesting happens, that stock becomes yours. So if it's something like RSUs, yes, you will, that zakat becomes due. If it's something like stock option, then you have to wait until you exercise the stock option, convert it into shares of stock, and then you've had that, then you look at again, when you get the shares of stock, you don't immediately pay zakat. You wait until your zakat due date comes, and then you evaluate and you end up paying the zakat on that balance.
Lovely. So let's look at this example number 2, which hopefully may not need as much instruction, but sometimes the idea here with the second example was, people were under the assumption that it's inaccessible. And I know you've clarified that, majority opinion is you pay on it because it's technically accessible, even with the penalty. But the ages that were specified were 45 and 65, because the idea here is those above the age of 59 and a half, the money now is no longer tied up. So there is no penalty. You can access the funds without any issues, but feel free to just address the rest of it here, inshallah.
Yeah. So if you follow the opinion that you do have to pay zakat on the 401k, then nothing changes in the 401k example. You would be paying on the 2 million over here. And if you follow the opinion that the money is if the money is inaccessible in a 401k, I don't know, Sheikh Aarij, do you have an opinion on that one? If somebody believes that the 401k is tied up wealth and it's inaccessible and they're not paying zakat the whole time, what would they do at the end over here when they do reach retirement age?
So we have a similar vehicle in Canada called RRSPs, right? And they're not exactly analogous because there's different types of RRSPs, but there is what I personally advise people is that if you are able to do the safer option, which is pay on whatever you can access after the penalties, then do that. But if you want a more precise option where you say, I don't have that much cash flow to be able to service that much zakat. If I pay that zakat, then I actually am, maybe I need to get zakat to meet my needs. And I would say then you follow the position or the mas'ala of damar, right? The situation where a person's wealth is inaccessible, like it's buried under the sand somewhere, or it's, it fell in the water and inaccessible, or a ruler has confiscated it and it's not giving back. Then the position there, and there's, multiple opinions, as you know, but the one of, I believe Imam Malik, is that the moment you get it, irrespective of how many years the wealth was inaccessible, that day you pay zakat once, and then that wealth is yours, and then you continue to pay for it in the future years as any other wealth. So I would imagine that damar would be a good analogous example.
In fact, what Sheikh just explained is the crux of the issue. Which is the 401k the basic issue boils down to, do you consider it inaccessible or not accessible? And the scholars who say it's inaccessible compare it to that box that's locked up and it's under the ground and buried and you don't have access to it. And the ones who say that no, you do have access, say no, you could go and fill out a form and withdraw the money right now, and you just have to pay a 10% penalty. So subtract the 10% and pay zakat on that. That's kind of the crux of the issue. So the 401k, you will follow the opinion based on what we just talked about. Pension, everybody agrees that whatever amount you're receiving on a monthly basis, that just adds to your income, and you don't have to pay anything on a pension balance, anything like that. Your home is paid off, so nothing to worry about there. There's no zakat due. It's your personal home. You have 2 rental properties worth 500,000 that are generating 5,000 income per month, and so. Generally, if you have a house, if you're a house flipper, you buy a house, you sell a house, you buy a house, you sell a house, then you would actually pay zakat on the entire value of the house, because it becomes a current asset or inventory, like you would say on a balance sheet. But if you deal with rental properties, so you buy a house, you rent it out, this becomes like the oven that's being used to bake the pizza, and therefore you don't have to pay zakat on that because it's a fixed asset that you're using to generate income. And therefore, what you do is you just take the income. Some people say you pay some zakat on the income, but what I say is you basically take the income just like you take any other income. You add it into your bank, and then whenever your zakat becomes due, you figure that out. But just like you've added any other money to your bank from any other income source, and then there's no liquid savings, so nothing to worry about there, no debts, right? So basically, in this case, according to me, you would take the 2 million, and then whatever's in your bank, and you would pay zakat on that, and that's really all these zakats, because there's no zakat on the pension, nothing on the home, nothing from the rental properties, nothing from the liquid savings, and nothing from the debts. We have 35 open questions, mashallah.
So I'll try and look at some of the ones that have come in. If you are looking for the recording and the slides, these can be shared with you, so no worries. I think it's okay from the scholars. We can share these slides, whoever requests them. Is that okay? And in general, the recording will also be on the YouTube channel of ShariaPortfolio, as well as our website. And those who have registered, a link will be sent. So if you missed some of the beginning, you'll be able to get that as soon as the link is available. One question that I saw that I get quite from some of the folks is, I've paid the zakat on this wealth after the nisab, and I've held it for a year, this savings, let's say it was 100,000 that I had saved, and I paid the zakat on it, my 2,500. So that 97,500 that's left over, after a year, one more year has passed. I've paid all my expenses, liabilities, I've subtracted. Now it's, maybe it didn't grow, but it's the same 97,500. Do I still pay zakat on that? Now, the answer most likely is yes, but I want the scholar to address, because I've seen a few times that question come up.
The basic idea is, like I said, zakat is on the savings that you have and not on the income, right? And Alhamdulillah, Allah made this so easy for us, because we only pay on those things that are extra. We don't have to pay, even if you have a fancy car. You could be driving the fanciest sports car, a supercar that's $1 million that you drive every day. You don't have to pay any zakat on it, because it's something that we use on a daily basis. So you can live in a mansion, you can drive a fancy car and not pay zakat. Now, keep in mind, some people get upset when I say this, because they say, wait, isn't that extravagance and excessive spending of money? Yeah, you will have to answer to Allah for extravagance and excessive spending. And, we figure that out separately. This is not a class on that. This is about zakat, right? And so zakat, you don't have to pay on your clothes. You don't have to pay on any of these things. What you're paying on is those things that grow. Okay, why stocks? Why do we have to pay zakat on stocks? Because stocks, we've bought them because we want to increase those in value. Why do we have to pay on inventory? Because those are things that are going to the market and we're going to make a profit on them. Why cash? What are we always trying to do with cash? We're always trying to grow our cash. This is excess cash, right? This is extra cash that we have that we haven't allocated to something. So alhamdulillah that Allah only has prescribed zakat on those things that are extra that we have and that continue to grow. And this is why, this goes back to the very beginning of the presentation, because if I have $1,000 and I pay zakat 2.5%, it's going to go down. And then next year, if I haven't invested in anything, what's going to happen? It's going to go down. And it's going to go down. It's going to go down. Every year, my money's going to go down, 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 right? But at the end of a few years, I'm going to have nothing left. So this goes back to either the hadith of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the athar attributed to Umar radiallahu anh, basically, that Sheikh Aarij talked about is, فَلْيَتَّجِرْ فِيهِ. Please take that money and invest that money. If you have any cash in the bank, don't leave it in the bank. Invest it, grow it, because otherwise zakat is going to just eat it all up. So try your hardest to try and grow your money. Now, yes, some years we lose money, some years we make money, right? But on average, we know in the S&P 500, we make 7% a year, right? On average, we're always making money. And so if we subtract, what's going to happen is over time, if you have no income sources and you just have a bunch of money sitting there, if you put it in the bank account, it just goes down in value. If you put in the S&P 500, you're non-Muslim, it goes up 7% a year on average. If you're a Muslim, you're not going to get the full 7%. You're going to get 4.5%, right? You're going to get 4.5% growth, because a part of it is part of our pillars of faith is that we want to purify our wealth, take care of the poor and the needy, and take care of this pillar of Islam, which is designed to teach us to disconnect to some extent from the dunya. What's the purpose of zakat? The scholars talk about what's the purpose of zakat is to remind us in case we're getting too money-minded. Oh, yeah, you know, let me make all these graphs of my net worth and my portfolio, what's going, that's good. We can make money, not a problem. But don't forget, there's a portion that you have to give towards your akhirah. And the meaning of zakat, we all know it means to purify. We're trying to purify our wealth, right? So sometimes we get some haram, sometimes we get these bad things. We want to get all of that purified. So yes, you will have to pay every year. And so our objective should be to try and make more money on our savings than we're giving away in zakat. Otherwise, we're not actually increasing our wealth. That's what we should be trying to do.
Thank you, Sheikh Umer. I think we can address maybe 3 more questions. As much as I see a lot of them here, I will take maybe 2 that I see that because I'm trying to pick the ones that I've also encountered with other clients, and I'm sure it's come up multiple times. So one is a donor advised fund, right? The donor advised fund is a vehicle that can be set up for those who want to transfer either cash or appreciated stock into an account. So for those who are new to that, just I'm mentioning what the definition of that is. You're setting up a vehicle that can accept cash or appreciated stock as a way to, obviously, instead of selling stock and you paying the capital gains, one way to mitigate that is to transfer the appreciated stock. So this question comes up because we have quite a few clients that have set up these donor advised funds, which, by the way, if there's any nonprofit leaders, it can be a good way to fund, a good source of revenue for the nonprofit by people donating to their DAF and then transferring to the charitable organization, such as Islamic Relief. And I saw another question about that. Yes, as long as they're Zakat eligible organizations, I believe it's okay to give to them, but the emphasis is on local, family first, prioritize that, as you heard. So going back to the donor advised fund, if I put $10,000 in there, that's no longer my wealth. It is earmarked as charitable money. Now, it has not been disbursed to the final recipient. So how do we deal with that?
Donor advised funds are wonderful vehicles for, it allows you to play this timing game, right? So for those that aren't familiar with it, basically what you can do is you can take a tax deduction now. Let's say you suddenly made a ton of money in a particular year. Alhamdulillah, that's a good problem to have. And you need a large tax deduction. So you take a portion of your wealth and you put it into a donor advised fund, and you immediately in that fiscal year, in that calendar year, you get to take a deduction on your Schedule A on your Form 1040, right? And you immediately get that benefit. However, what happens with the DAF is it goes into an account, and now it is sitting in that account, where the reason it's called a donor advised fund is you actually get some level of control over what you're doing with that money. So now you continue to invest that money. Let's say you put it in the stock market, in an index, something like that, and you continue to grow it. And in future years, you can decide, next year, I'm going to give 10% of that to this charity. And then, the second year, I'm going to give this percentage to this charity, and you have full control. And you get to control that schedule as you go along. So you're continuing to invest it. So a few things here. Number one, zakah money, once given to an organization, let's say you give it to Islamic Relief's zakah, or you give it to any other organization, it's not to be invested. Zakah money is to be directly given to the recipient. Why do you not invest zakah money? Because it can go up and down and you can lose it, right? And so if it's been given for a purpose, it needs to be delivered for that purpose. So that's not. So the bigger issue is zakat is not considered given until it actually reaches the recipient, and that's really the issue. So what you get to do is a donor advised fund. Let's say you're putting, generally, if you have a donor advised fund, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. So let's say you put $100,000 in a donor advised fund. The value is you get the $100,000 tax benefit this year, right? But you haven't given 100,000 in zakah. That's not what you've done. What you get to do is you get to decouple the timing. So let's say even you give all your zakat to one charity, right? But you don't want to give it all this year because all your zakah is not due. What you could do is you could put it all in the donor advised fund and then schedule on an annual basis. And you continue to invest it, right? It's your investments, you continue to invest it, and then you can give it in future years. You take the tax deduction, but you do not get to claim that you've given the zakat. When the money leaves that donor advised fund account and it goes to the charity, at that point you can consider it given. Now, very, very technically speaking, the zakat should actually reach the end recipient. It should actually go all the way to the person receiving it. And that's when it's given, that's when it's considered given. But that's too burdensome upon people. It doesn't, and so we consider it actually given when you've given it to the charity. And when it leaves the DAF, the donor advice fund, and it goes to the charity, that's when you've considered it paid because it's gone to where it's supposed to go. Until then, it's still in an account that you're directing where the money goes, how it's being invested, it's going up and down in value. But it's still a great vehicle to separate the zakat versus the tax deduction.
Thank you. Again, we'll take one or two more. If you have something that sticks out, let me know, but it's hard to be able to say.
Maybe this one question here that came early on.
Sure.
If I read it, inshallah, Sheikh Umar, please, if you can answer that. Can we not think of stocks as an investment or partnership in a business, like a 1% owner of bakery example? Just because we can easily liquidate stocks doesn't mean that does it mean it's cash equivalent? Is it not like my money locked in a real business like Apple or Microsoft?
I'm just reading it. Okay, so that's a really good question. So how do you think about stocks? Okay, the answer is this boils down to what is the purpose behind why you bought that stock. So I can buy a car and I don't have to pay zakat on it because I'm going to drive it every day. I can buy a car and I have to pay zakat on the full value because maybe I bought it today and I'm planning to sell it, in a few months or tomorrow or next year or whatever. And so if my zakat due date comes, I have to pay zakat on that. So the same item, if I buy a house and I'm living in it, I don't pay zakat on it. If I buy a house and only to get capital gains from it, now I pay zakat on the full value of the house. If I buy a house to rent it out, now I'm not paying zakat on the house, but I'm getting the rental income that I'll eventually pay zakat on, right? So the same asset can have different types of zakat due on it depending on what purpose you purchased it for. So this is a really good question about stocks. How much zakat is due on the stock? And the question becomes, do you pay on the market value of the stock? Or do you think of the stock as a business that you have? So if that business is a pizza business and it has an oven, then why should you have to pay on the price of the oven? Because that is part of a fixed asset that we said you don't have to pay zakat on, right? So the scholars have basically said, if you think of a stock as something like as a partnership in a business. Hey, I am becoming a shareholder along with whether it's 5 other shareholders, a million other shareholders, it doesn't really matter. I am owning this business. I'm keeping it for the long term. Maybe I care about the dividends, the income, that's what I care about. That's what I'm looking at. Then I am actually treating it like a business and I don't have to pay on the market value of the zakat. Okay, I don't have to pay on the market value of the stock. I pay on the assets that exist. So I take the cash and the cash equivalents. I take the inventories, the raw materials, the work in progress goods, and the fixed, the finished goods, and I take the accounts receivable, and those are the different assets that I have, and I will pay zakat on that only. Okay. That's if you have this long-term view of you're treating the stock as a business and you care about the dividends and all of these things. And there's many different standards that talk about the details of this. And there's some tools available online because you're like, well, how am I supposed to do that? Am I supposed to download a balance sheet and calculate all of these things on the, on a stock by stock basis? It's like, no, that's too much work. There's online tools available that help you calculate the zakat if you have a business view to when you purchase shares. And by the way, if you're investing for the long term and you're treating ShariaPortfolio as your advisor, right? And you're saying, hey, ShariaPortfolio, please build a portfolio for me and manage this long-term portfolio for me. My view is that you can pay on you can look at these stocks as businesses. ShariaPortfolio does a very comprehensive analysis of the stocks it purchases. I know I've been through this process with the people at ShariaPortfolio, so I know there's a process of looking at the fundamentals of the stock. What is the business? What are the growth prospects? kind of looking at the different financial ratios and doing some level of assessment. It isn't just like, oh, the stock, we think the stock will go up. There's a lot more due diligence that goes into building a portfolio. And if you're investing, similarly, if you're doing passive investing, so if you're investing in an index, that is also a long-term view of the stock. So similarly, you can take that view and you only have to pay on you only have to use the net asset model. You don't have to pay on the market value. But if you look at a stock as a thing that I buy it today, I sell it tomorrow, I don't really know. I just know that I just, Tesla stock will go up, I think, but I don't look at it as a business. Well, now you're treating it like that house that you bought yesterday and you're going to sell tomorrow, or the car that you bought and you're going to sell. You're treating it like a commodity. You don't actually think of the stock as a business. You just think of this thing that you buy that goes up and down in value. And the scholars have said that in that scenario, you do pay on the market value of the stock. So you're going to pay on the full value because you're not treating it like a business.
Jazakallah khair. I'll leave with a simple one because I don't think we can handle any other longer answers. And this is for Sheikh Aarij. Is zakat due on jewelry? Now, I know a lot of our women, mashallah, they have heirlooms and other things. And I've seen you address this previously. So maybe you can address, is zakat due on the jewelry that is worn, or heirlooms and so on? Just feel free to address that. And then inshallah, we can wrap up. If your question was not addressed, please do reach out to us. Our contact information is all on the team website, so feel free to reach out to us. But our apologies, I don't want to take up that much more time. And inshallah, we can address this last question on jewelry and let you all be on your way for iftar and salat as
well. So there's two opinions on jewelry here that is found in the classical, the two classical positions that are found. The first position is of Imam Abu Hanifa in the Hanafi madhab, which is that there is zakat to be paid on jewelry, the gold and silver of the jewelry, irrespective if it's worn or not worn, if it's an heirloom that's just given to kids and whatnot, right? Like it doesn't matter what the usage is jewelry is just gold and silver. And that is the safer position if you like to follow that. The other position is of the other three imams, and their position is that the ma yulbas adatan, they say what's worn regularly or as habitually, what's worn habitually by a woman, there is no zakat on that jewelry, and that can be excluded from the calculation that we make. They qualify that with the idea of it's habitual. What's habitual now, right? Is it something that a woman wears every day? Is it something she wears on occasion? That's really like you can there's no one cut and dry answer. In reality, if that's in your bedroom and it's there, you can wear it whenever you wear clothes, right? Like it's in your closet or something. That I would consider to be something that you can wear habitually. Whereas if it's stored in like a safety lockbox in the bank, that I would say is more like a gold bullion that is stored for safekeeping purposes. So if the jewelry, if you follow the second position here of the Jumhur, the majority of the Imams, then if it's in your closet, you wear it from time to time, then you can exclude that from your zakat calculations. If it's in your safety deposit box, you're keeping it for your kids, your grandkids, it's just like an investment, then you should pay zakat on that. Wallahu alam.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you once again, all of those who've joined us. I know we've tried to address a lot of them live, and a lot of them have been answered there. If you want to, again, connect with one of our advisors, we would be more than happy to discuss any of your other zakat questions that are not addressed. And if we need to tap our scholars, we have them, inshallah, for assistance or to discuss any of the other items that you want us to go over with you. Feel free to reach out to us anytime, inshallah. If you found this helpful, please feel free to share this with your colleagues and friends, because we want the education to spread. The link will be available on our website. And those who have signed up for the webinar today, email will be sent with the recording as well, inshallah. So with that, we want to leave you all with a blessed rest of your Ramadan, and hope to be able to meet once again in the future for another webinar, and hopefully you all benefited, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.